product deep dive. I do this about once a month, and it's an opportunity for existing customers, prospective customers, a few competitors usually join to see everything that we've got going on. So the run of show for today is I'm going to just a quick description of who we are, and then I'm going to divide up into a product, a roadmap, and a vision for 4 core parts of the software. I'm going to try to find the balance between getting a little nuanced and detailed. There's a few customers on here who probably want to see how a specific feature works, but I'm going to not bore you with the specific details of every button and try to sort of show everybody what is going on and where this product is headed. And we're going to do that for a physical risk assessment product, our transition risk and opportunity product, our reporting module, and our risk planning module, excuse me. So, all this water here and start coughing right away. The Q&A is open, the chat is open, so feel free to ask questions at any time to make this as interactive as we possibly can. That would be great. All right, so let's get into it. Who are we? So my name is Adriel. I am the founder and CEO of Beehive. We're an AI-powered enterprise climate risk management company, which means, among other things, we help our customers comply with global climate-related financial risk regulations that require TCFD reports and or IFRS S2 related reports. So let's get into it. The first thing we're going to talk about is physical risk assessments. So the problem we are solving when it comes to physical risk assessments is the following. They are not data-driven and they're often limited in scope. Traditionally, when a company does a physical risk assessment paired with a consultant, they're not necessarily data-driven. So sometimes the consultant goes back to the office manager at a company and asks a lot of questions and tries to say, hey, office manager in Los Angeles or in Berlin or in Tokyo, you tell me, what do you think your exposure to wildfires or floods is? And that's probably the worst version of it. Sometimes they use some free tools that show generally California has wildfires and generally Brazil might have flooding, but that's not that helpful. Which part of California? San Francisco, I promise you, does not have wildfires. They're not data-driven and they're limited in scope, which means you often pay per asset. So a consultant says, sure, no problem. Do you have 100 assets? That'll be $100,000. Do you have 200 assets? That'll be $150,000. And so you're obviously managing budget really closely. So the product of Beehive today allows you to do an auditable global risk assessment in seconds. So what that means is we build climate models all over the world. So you can immediately see wildfire exposure all over the world, flood exposure all over the world. You can do scenario analysis. So what does this look like in 30 years? Or perhaps you want to know under the worst climate scenario, how many assets of yours are exposed to cyclones, specifically if you focus on offices, and specifically if you want to focus on those most highly exposed. So you're able to do a bunch of filtration. As I also said, it's auditable. So what you're able to do is on any asset that you put in here, you have what's called an audit trail here, which means we always tell you not just cyclone risk is high or flood risk is or wildfire risk is low, but we explain to you the science behind why it is what it is. And very importantly here, the science is not, it could be useful, and if you find it useful, that's great. The intention is not for you to say, oh my goodness, this is impervious surfaces and grasslands and tidal flats. How fascinating. That's not the point. The point is for the audit purpose. So if you know these regulations around Australia and CSRD in particular, audit and assurance has to be a part of this. So you can't just say, oh yeah, I've got low risk, don't worry about it. An external party needs to come in and validate it. And this allows them to do that. This allows them to say, well, why do you think wildfire is what it is? And you say, well, I don't know. Like, here's the science. If you want to dig into it, dig into it. So that's where that audit trail comes in. What I want to do, I want to walk you through what this looks like start to finish. So let's look up an address. Let's say Apple HQ address is 1 Apple Parkway, Cupertino. So the way you add an asset, this has been around for a few months, but I think it's new for some of the people who are on here. You can add unlimited assets into Beehive, and there's no cost per asset. We catalog them into 4 categories. There's your facilities, your people, your supply chain, and your customers. But within that, you can add unlimited flexibility and customization. So we have some templates of offices, but if you want to make a very custom one, like you see, I've got all these examples here. You can just add custom type and call it, super special Apple office or whatever. I'm not going to do that because I have 400 in here. But that customization is really helpful, so it fits your language. So you throw in the office, I'll call it Apple HQ. What was that address again? One Apple Park Way. One Apple Park. There you go. One Apple Park Way. Perhaps they own the office. Perhaps they say there's 20,000 people in there. And you add the office. So you add it really quickly. There's ways to do bulk uploads, so you're not always adding each of your assets manually like that. We can automatically fly and see that asset. And so it'll pull up, well, what is the exposure of Apple HQ to all these different hazards? Looks like there's very low wildfire risk. That's interesting because I thought that part of California had a lot of wildfire risk. Let's just filter this a little more cleanly. Uh, Oops, clicking on my password buttons. So this makes some more sense, right? This area of California, which is highways and bigger cities, does not have wildfire exposure, but it is near areas of wildfire exposure. So this sort of view allows you to say, okay, well, my asset itself is probably not going to be hit by wildfire. The region might be. And where this is interesting is if you want to say, who are the employees I have in the region around me, maybe you had employees who lived here and you were able to kind of see that connection. We're sure your office is safe from wildfires, but your employees might not be, or there could be a ton of smoke that impacts your office. So you have those effects. And flood risk looks high, which is surprising to me. I wouldn't think so. Why is that? Well, it looks like flood risk right around the bay is high, which again makes a little bit of sense. You're right on the water. There's been flood history here before. And we're actually talking about that. So that's where you can get this audit trail. There's a couple other things I want to show you. There's very easy ways to visualize this data to make it very interactive. So you're able to export all of this all the time. So there's this table format, which is very helpful if you want to do your own analysis. Export this as a CSV. There's tables right in here where a lot of the basic reports you might want to run can be very helpfully done in here. So if you want to understand which percentage of your offices in North America are highly or medium exposed by disaster type, you're able to do that very quickly. If you want to understand by country focused on employees who has high exposure, specifically from cyclones and floods, it looks like you have 187 in the United States, 85 in India, 22 in the UK, and a few, and I think PR is Portugal. So you're able to do this, and again, export this as a PNG, which makes it very, very easy. Now, a couple of very cool things that are relatively new. First of all, on every single asset, if you want to send a report of that risk to one particular person, but you don't want to invite them to a software, do a login, that's a pain in the butt, you can download a report and this automatically downloads a report for that specific asset. So for this office asset called Spain, at this address, here's what we know about wildfire exposure, flood exposure, heat exposure. So this is very helpful if you want to send something to an office manager, send something to a warehouse manager, so they have the context without going into the software. The other thing that's really cool is we invest a lot in our AI, and this gets better each time. What's cool about the AI inside of Beehive is two things. The first is it's trained on how we do risk. So again, going back to audit or confidence in the data, you can ask a question like, explain why my Apple HQ office might be at high flood risk. That is surprising in that part of California. And what the AI is trained on is all of our documentation. This is new as well. So while it answers, I'll just show you this. You can go to docs.beehiveclimate.com and we walk through pretty much everything very transparently of our entire product, where you can see from the very beginning, how do you define your organization with a bunch of demos of how you do that. You can see how do you upload assets. That's what I just showed you. Here's how you can actually upload an asset. And you can also read about all of our methodology. There's no black boxes. It's fully transparent. You're able to see everything about how we do risk. So how do we do cyclone method? What is our cyclone methodology? What papers do we use? What databases do we search for? This is all public at docs.beehiveclimate.com, which if you are very sciencey, that means you can go and read this and explore this and open all these links and understand this. There's an embedded AI we can ask this, but our AI is trained on this. So when it is answering this question, it is pulling both from our models. So it answers based on like how you guys did risk inside of Beehive, but also it's trained on your data. So it's trained on where your office is. We'll talk about quantification in a second, but what are the dollar values associated with those offices? And it's able to give you very helpful information. So here it pulled up Apple HQ and everything else you have in the area, and it explained why Cupertino I didn't mention Cupertino, but it found that office in Cupertino has high flood risk, and it gave you very specific examples about the Stephen Creek watershed, and some urbanization issues, a lot more parking lots, reducing natural water absorption. Super interesting. I always like to push this live to see what it comes up with. So I really had no idea what it would do. So the AI just getting better and better, and we're spending a lot of effort there. So a helpful way to pull out insights. The last thing that's really important around physical risk is quantification. And this is maybe has been getting the best reactions of anything that we do. So you're able to put dollar values on this risk. So instead of us telling you, hey, you got 920 or 456 assets at high risk, that's could be helpful. What if all those assets are empty buildings that no one lives in? It's very different than if you have two assets at high risk, but they each store $10 billion of cash bills. You clearly the two numbers is misleading. So you're able to quantify this risk. And the way this works is really cool. We don't tell you, hey, your risk is 74 million, go trust us. We give you the tools to assess this for yourself. And it works in the following way. We have this concept in here of custom equations. And so what you're able to do is come in here and say, how do I really think about risk to offices or to data centers or to warehouses or to telephone poles or to giant warehouses or very small warehouses or warehouses that store electronics versus the warehouses that store spoilable food and beverage items or medicines. And you're able to create custom equations for custom assets so that they're all very relevant. So for example, let's say I want to create one for factories. I'm able to build this manually. Well, maybe I think about this for a factory. The way I think about risk is the cost per closure day times the closure days per event, plus maybe the lost revenue per closure day, maybe some repair costs per event, whatever. So I'm able to build this out. But maybe this is getting complicated. You're able to ask the AI to do this for you. So you're able to say, this is a factory that I own and operate and store a lot of expensive stuff in. And the AI will take that with a bunch of training behind the scenes and build out the right equation for you that you are then able to, of course, edit and have control over. So it thinks you should do cost per closure day, times closure days per event, plus a lost revenue per closure day, plus a repair cost because you own it, plus a replacement cost in case you need to replace the goods. It's pretty good. So you're able to, I won't accept this. I have too many in my little demo account here, but you're able to accept this, adjust this. You're able to say, I actually don't want that one, whatever. Now, a couple of things that are new for folks who've been following along for a while here, current customers, you're able to adjust everything. Again, this is about giving you control and changing the numbers. So, for example, right now, the way, let's go to Azure Data Centers because that's what here. The way Azure Data Centers looks is this is the equation I have. It's cost per hours of downtime times hours of downtime per event. Very simple equation. But maybe I want to adjust what is the cost per hour of downtime. Like, how much money do I lose if my Azure data center is down for an hour? Is it $50,000 an hour? Maybe if you're, a CPG company or a retailer, maybe it's not a big deal. If you're a software company or a media company, it's a very big deal. If your data center is down for an hour, you lose $5 million an hour. You could change all that. Maybe you are very worried about wildfires. You could have 5 hours of downtime if there's a wildfire. We've actually done a lot to defend against floods. And you are very worried about cyclones, and you're very worried about heat stress, but you're not at all worried about drought. So you're able to adjust all this, save it, and then all this, I made the numbers very big, probably too big, but I made the numbers very big, and it all adjusts and flows through. Now, a couple additional cool things here. Maybe you have multiple Azure data centers. Like, actually, let's take a look. How many? Search Azure. There you go. I have two Azure data centers in here. But maybe I think about them differently. Cloud data centers are not the best example here, but roll with me. Maybe I think about them differently. Maybe one, I've done a lot. Maybe one, I have a lot of data flowing through, and the other one, I don't have a lot of data flowing through. So one of them, I lose actually 70 million an hour. The other one, I lose 30 million an hour. So it averages to 50, but I want to make that adjustment. What you're able to do is come in here and find Azure and say, for this East US data center, I lose actually $70 million. And you know what? I've done a lot of work around wildfire prevention efforts. So I'm going to save that. And for this one, I I forgot what I did last time, but I only lose $20 million an hour. And I'm actually super concerned about heat stress because I know I should be. And you're able to save that. And again, all of that is going to automatically flow through. You see those numbers change, automatically flow through. So that adjusting per parameter is a really cool new thing where if you just want to make a generic number for all your retail stores, for example, great. Every retail store loses, $10,000 a day that is closed. But maybe your flagship, you want to go and add a zero. And maybe you know that there's one that's like barely doing any business and you want to go take away a zero. It's not about like spending tons of time and getting each one perfectly accurate. I don't think that's a good use of your time. I don't think you get rewarded for that level of accuracy because all of this is sort of directionally predictive in the end anyway. But I do think you want to be able to say my highest has a lot more exposure than my lowest. I'm going to change back my numbers here so it doesn't look so ridiculous. Where was I? I was in Azure. Just parameters. We're going to take away a couple zeros and save that. The other thing that's very important, you're able to export all this as a Excel file. And so this is super important. Again, just going back to audit, going back to how do you communicate with the finance team, talking about how do you, let me open this up just so you can see this. How do you, there we go. How do you like get these numbers correct? How do you share this with people? How do you make sure they're accurate? Everything that we did is built out in this spreadsheet. And so, you're able to go to the Azure data centers and see some are 70 million, some are 20 million. This is because I have a lot of availability zones under each. But you see that division that we just set up. You see the wildfire changes that I made across each. This one has a 1 risk for flood. This one has a 7 risk for flood. So it's all customized with the dollar values and how it was all calculated. You see every equation is in here. So you're able to go to your finance team and say, this is how I got these numbers, adjust them. And your finance team is able to say, no, 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 you got this wrong. This is only 40 million or whatever. Great, no problem. 40 million, that changed all the numbers. And then you can come back into Beehive and adjust that number. So that export feature is new. It was very difficult to build, but it is new and hopefully useful. Okay, talk about customer equations, talk about snapshots, so actually skip for now. So what's on the roadmap here? Right now, we support 3 scenarios, SSP1, SSP3, SSP5. These are IPCC scenarios. They actually have hyphens after them. So technically, there's 2 types of SSP1. There's SSP1 1.9 and SSP1 2.6. It's very nuanced, but some of you might know this stuff. Under Australian law, you have to use SSP1 1.9, and we currently only support SSP1 2.6. In the next 2 weeks, we're going to add SSP1 1.9 to be able to comply with that. So a little technical, but matters to some folks. We're adding winter storms. So right now, the 5 hazards that we support are wildfires, floods, heat waves, cyclones, and drought. 5 is a little misleading because drought includes water scarcity. Flood includes both pluvial flooding and sea level coastal flooding. Some people break that out. We don't. I think it's unnecessarily complicated and not needed to break it out. You don't care why it's flooding, but it's because of a river or coast. You just care that your stuff is wet. So we combine it into one. We're adding winter storms, hopefully about 6 weeks or so, as the 6th hazard. We're also right now, AI does not exist throughout the entire app. It's probably about half the app. So you'll see it in all these pages on the bottom right here. It does not exist in Impact. Getting these numbers right is very tricky and important. And so we want to get these numbers right. And just in case you're wondering why the 2 billion didn't change, even though I changed it there, it's because in my portfolio here, I need to change these back. I forgot about that. And there you go. It means the app works and all your customizations are properly connected throughout the whole software. Could a consultant do that? I don't think so. Actually, I see a couple of consultants on here. You're the good consultants. You could have done that, but no one else. All right. So that's what it is. The vision, there's a lot more hazards that we could build. There's many types of hazards. Some I think are useful, like tornadoes and blizzards that we're working on. Some are not that relevant to corporates, like permafrost thawing or ocean acidification or solidification. That can't be right. Whatever that word is, I should practice these things. So some we will add, some we won't add, but we want to get more in there over time. So the fully authentic rendition. Okay, so that is physical risk. Again, chime in with any questions or Q&A thread that you would like. I'm actually going to change this order a little bit because I want to talk about plan and respond first. So, and I'm going to make this a relatively short one, and then we can come back to it if you guys are interested. Um, what do you do with this information? Great. We told you that risk is high in these areas and low in those areas. We maybe told you that it's quantifiable to this degree. Awesome. Like, where do you go with this? What can you possibly do? How is this useful? I'm very proud of what we're doing over here. So what we did is instead of just talking about projections theoretically based on climate models that are always debatable, we cataloged thousands of historic cyclones, thousands of historic cyclones and millions of wildfires, overlaid them on top of your business, and said, in any given period of time, here are the most likely to happen. And if they did happen, here's how much money you would lose, and here's which of your assets would be impacted. And when you're able to do this is very cool. So you're able to say, in any given period of time, make these months whatever you want, but let's say April through June, next quarter or this quarter, I am worried about hurricanes to the tune of $40 million and wildfires to the tune of $4,000. Great. Not concerned about wildfires. Let's go to cyclones. Where in the world am I worried about cyclones? Well, it looks like mostly in this period of time, it's Northeast America, Eastern America, Central America, a little bit of Asia. And of my assets in these areas, what am I concerned about? Well, if I want to go by kind of event impact, I got this office, this office, this office, this office, each of which might lose this much money in this given period of time. Now, why do we think that? Well, you can actually see that catalog of events right here. Here's actual hurricanes, actual cyclones all over the world that have impacted your business. And so you're able to say, I want to understand what's going on in Southeast Asia. So let's click Southeast Asia buttons and see when 2008, we actually you can sort this by year so you can see the recency. In 2024, Hurricane Ramal looked like this and hit one of your assets. In 2021, Hurricane Choi Wan looked like this and hurt one of your assets, could have cost you $1.6 million. 2021 again, Hurricane Yas looked like this, hit your assets. So you're able to see these, and this is really cool. This is brand new. So let's go back to the US for a moment. So we'll go to Eastern North America. Hurricane Beryl. We probably all remember Hurricane Beryl. Absolutely horrible, horrible hurricane. Flooded Houston and much of Texas, closed the ports. Hurricane Beryl in 2024 affected 20 of your assets to the tune of $11 million of potential losses. We know this because this is the path that Hurricane Beryl took. And these are your assets. These are all your assets that were impacted by Hurricane Beryl. And what this allows you to do is actually integrate climate into your ERM team. So climate is no longer, it's not, the goal is not just to be a risk assessment that everyone moves on from, but it is to be an active planning and response effort to natural disasters. And this allows you to do that. So you can come in here and say, hey, I want to draw everyone's attention mostly to North American and Central American problems, because everything below that is not a material issue. We call it medium risk. There's tagging you can do in the software to set up. And it looks like here I set up anything above 5 million is high, below 5 million is medium, below 1 million is low. So that's what these tags are. But hey, risk team, I want to draw your attention to the stuff happening in North and Central America. Specifically, maybe you can want to look at this by assets. Specifically, I'm concerned mostly about these particular assets. Oh, you want to understand why? Because these are the types of hurricanes that have happened. That's a really, really cool thing that you can do. So, kind of the next step beyond risk planning. So the maps are new. We're adding more. Right now, we support cyclones and wildfires here. We'll be adding floods sometime over the summer. Very importantly, we want to be able to say, what should you do about this? This is much more, I should probably add that in the vision section, but it's, hey, you're telling me that I got $28 million of exposure in Northeast North America next quarter, and Gymnasium and Blackstone HQ can lose 1.6. Any ideas, anyone, about what we can do about this? We want to get into that phase of work where we're able to have AI generate business continuity plans for you, have AI check your insurance and make sure you have the right insurance, work with your insurance team on that. There's a lot of really cool things we can do with AI over time. Okay. Now let's get back to the reporting stuff. So let's talk about transition risks. So transition risks and opportunities. The problem here that we are solving is that if anyone here has gone through a transition risk and opportunity review before, it is usually a tabletop exercise that takes a very long time and not really based in data. Anecdotally, the way this often works is a lovely consultant that you hire for a lot of money calls you up and says, "All right, we're going to do a kickoff call." They do a kickoff call. They ask you a bunch of questions. They say, "Great, we've got to set up three workshops, one with your finance team, one with your marketing team, one with your operations team." Takes 3 months to schedule those workshops because people are busy. And in those workshops, three different people each. So it's 10 people total, spend an hour of their time. So that's 10 hours of very expensive executive time talking about potential exposures and potential problems. And it's all a little weird because when was the last time the head of marketing ever thought about climate change? That's not their job. And then eventually they come back, they think really hard, they read what your peers have done, and they come back with risks that you should consider. That's sort of how the process works today. Now, how could the process work in an AI driven world? So we provide immediate AI driven transition risk and opportunity assessments and do all the scenarios that you need here. Here's how that looks. We try to emulate the best version of that consultant experience, but we do that with AI. So we give the AI a bunch of information about your business. Read the 10K, read the ESG reports, read the emissions, read all this stuff online about your industry, read thousands and thousands of pages. Also, read what all of your peers have said. Who do you consider peers? You're able to select that. And if you like GM, you pick GM. If you don't use GM, you don't pick GM. You're able to update that. Read everything that General Motors and CVS and Air Liquide and President's Medical Care have said about their own risk exposure. And then not in 3 or 4 months, but in a minute, come up with risks and opportunities that I should probably be worried about. And for each one of these risks and opportunities that you mentioned, explain your logic. The AI writes up, here's why this is probably relevant to you, and show me peers that have said the same thing. So, of this risk around greenwashing, here's how Air Liquide talked about it. They talked about air reputational risk. Here's how Atlassian talked about it. They also called it reputational risk. GitLab talked about this as reputational loss. And then you're able to say, I accept this risk. This is a relevant risk to me, or I don't. AI got this wrong, not a relevant risk. Again, everything's audited. So you just say not relevant. So there's an audit trail behind all of this. And then the AI drafts disclosures that could be relevant for you. You're able to quantify this. Again, you have all the control of this. So I like to say, think of the AI as your very, very hardworking MBA intern. Smart, clever, did all the reading, worked overnight, did a good job. You should always review everything that it says. But you're able to adjust this. You're able to say, I want to delete this word. I want to change some stuff. You're able to benchmark. So you're able to say, hey, I care a lot about S&P. Oh, I love how S&P said this. I'm going to adjust my sentence and say exactly what S&P said. Or, you know what, Air Liquide did it better. I'm going to like connect these two and combine them a little bit. Or what was the context in Air Liquide? Oh, I can go to page 48 of this report. Great. Here you are. You open up Air Liquide's report. You can go to page 48 and you can find that actual quote. So all that benchmarking is actually super popular in Beehive. Maybe one of our most loved features. I won't spend a lot of time here unless anyone asks questions, but you're also able to do, for many of these laws, you have to do scenario analysis aligned with NGFS, which basically says what will the world look like in these different scenarios you see here. This on its own is often a 2 month engagement with someone relatively senior because it's difficult and takes a lot of time. Here you're able to say, I care about these potential scenarios. You run the scenario, and the AI comes up with how your risks and opportunities evolve across these different scenarios. So a very fast process. Happy to spend more time here if anyone is interested. What's on the roadmap here is AI. So we will be adding AI into this feature set in a week or two, and then beginning to quantify some transition risks. Carbon tax will probably be the first one that we do. Let's call it by the fall, probably. So that's what's going on there. All right. Now let's talk about reporting. So the problem that we're solving here is that writing these climate risk compliance reports, these TCFD, these IFRS reports, there's a lot of time and a lot of expertise. TCFD reports, can be not terribly long, but just as an example, here's a TCFD report that I pulled up quickly. It's a TCFD report. It's 11 pages, but it's a lot of text. This is a lot of stuff going on in a TCFD report. It just takes a while. A IFRS report can be even longer. This is an example of an IFRS report. This is, I mean, just scroll here. All this stuff takes forever. But how long is this thing? Wow. PwC is a bunch of winners. 64 years old, 64 pages long. Takes a long time to write. What you're able to do inside of Beehive is draft these reports nearly automatically with AI. So you're able to come in here, you're able to generate unlimited number of reports so you can practice, or you can do this for different jurisdictions. But you're able to do a bunch of these, and you're able to come in here and say, hey, I want you to draft a great answer to this question based on everything you know about how I did my risk work, based on previous disclosures I have, based on the rules of the TCFD, and do it that way. Now, there's a couple of cool things in here. This is a collaborative tool. Drafting these disclosures is a collaborative effort. Your sustainability person comes in, your lawyer comes in, your finance person comes in. You're able to do that in here. So you can see how the AI answered, what edits happened, what our customer success person changed for you, what your lawyer did. All of this is tracked. And there's even approval. So if at the end you say, oh, this is the best answer I have, great. You can mark this as approved. You see this is now approved. This is the answer that gets saved and flows through everywhere. So that's very useful. There's also benchmarking built right in here. So if you say, I really care about how CVS answers questions or General Motors answers questions, just like in what a GM identifies as risks, and maybe I should think about that. This is how did GM answer this question? And maybe I should think about that. Same thing, you can come in here and say, I really need a little more context. Let me see GM's full disclosure. They're all connected here. And this is new and really, really cool. You're able to ask the AI, tell me 3 ways I can make my answer to question 1 more like General Motors. And the AI does exactly what you would expect AI to do. It has the context of your question. It has the context of the General Motors answers. It has the context of the rules of the TCFD and some guidance and some prompts behind the scenes to make this as effective and helpful to you as possible. And it'll come out here and it'll spit out, here's a few ways you might want to improve your answer. Here's how you might want to rewrite it. And you're able to be very collaborative with this. So again, you could do some of this stuff in your basic AI. But the fact that side by side, you have the actual GM answer, the AI prompt gets all that information, and then it has a lot of context behind that, that can be really helpful. So here's 3 specific ways you can do this. It gives you the specific action you should take. Here's an example of how you might want to say this, whatever else. It says, here's what GM does. So it does a very good job of being your useful consultant, except immediate and pretty good price. So that's what happens in the reports. One thing that's coming soon is basically being able to do this very similar experience for IFRS. So I showed you how big of an effort IFRS can be. Let me open this up here. So there's a couple cool things coming in IFRS. I'm hoping everybody can still see my screen. I think I hope you can still see my screen here. So this is a video that's coming soon. This is what the IFRS document will look like. If someone can give me like a thumbs up or a yes, they still see, you see a video now of something loading. But for the IFRS documents, there will be some really cool new things. So not only can you answer all hundreds of questions that are in IFRS, but sourcing is going to be in here too. So the AI will tell you, here's why I wrote what I wrote. Here's the place that I got that data point. Here's the source that I retrieved that. Here's how you I got it from this particular impact report. You can click in there and go read that impact report to make sure it's all coming from the right place. So that sourcing is going to be something really, really amazing that is out in, let's say, 2 to 4 weeks. That'll be a really cool experience. So then you have this audit trail again. So every statement, every claim the AI makes will be tied back to a specific source that will be very helpful. So that is what that will look like. No one commented, so hopefully everyone saw that. And so that's coming very soon, along with a couple of other things to make this whole experience much better. But it is a very cool experience right now. I mean, if you have to do a TCFD or an IFRS report, our basic pitch, especially around TCFD, is that what would normally take 4 or so months, you can do in an hour inside of Beehive, and it's really fast. I think someone's raising their hand with a question. So there's a Q&A and there's a chat. So feel free to ask it right in there, and we will answer it. So we talked about that. We talked about benchmarking. So we're going to bring AI into the IFRS S2, as I just showed you. The sourcing and the dashboard we won't get into. It's just a nice little feature. Awesome. So that was a lot on the BI product. I talked for a long time there. I will pause and let anyone ask us questions, but there's one other feature I want to show you that is about to release later today as a free product for everybody. So we cataloged almost 60 regulations across over 20 jurisdictions related to climate risk. And you're able to do some cool things here. It's going to launch very soon, like in an hour or two. What you can do is put in your company's name or the 10K or any other information and have our AI search for what global climate risk regulations are relevant. So, for example, you click Apple, maybe you say skip because you don't have the 10K available at this moment in time, and it'll find Apple. It'll confirm that it's the correct Apple, and it'll show you here's the global regulations that are relevant to this person. We got an error. See, this is why we didn't. Oh, I think I know why. Let's try this one more time. This is why it's not out yet. This is why it's not out yet. Let's try this one more time with that refresh and see if it did or it didn't work. When it's out, it'll work, I promise. What you'd be able to do is upload your 10K, and it basically pulls, here's a bunch of, there we go, it got there. Here's the Apple. Let's make sure this is the correct Apple. And here's all the risk regulations around the world. There's 2 in the UK, there's 1 in the US, there's 1 in the Philippines, there's 1 in Nigeria that are relevant. For any one of these, here's why the AI thinks it applies to you specifically. Here's some context about who it applies to. Here's some other details you might want to know. You can go to the source. So that's the IFRS source. This is sort of that Nigeria law. So that's information about Nigeria if you want to look more. And then you're able to chat with the AI. Tell me more about the Nigeria law. Tell me more about what I need to do to comply with what's going on in Rwanda. Tell me more about the next relevant date for Turkey. So you're able to pull out all that information in hopefully a very cool and a useful way. You can do this just with the search like I showed you, or put in a domain and it'll find publicly available information. You can clarify things, say, oh, I actually got my revenue wrong, or I am publicly traded, or I am private, or whatever. You can ask more specific questions. So hopefully that is all very helpful and free. That'll be out very soon. If you want to kind of track that, if you just go to our homepage under resources, it'll soon be right over here. So yeah, you can check tomorrow morning and it should be there. All right, everybody. Did we cover everything? Dashboard sources. I think those are all the big things. So I'm happy to stick around, answer questions, talk about any feature set that's coming, anything at all on your minds. Feel free to jump in the chat or in the Q&A. Someone asked if B5 is offered on a module basis or is full service product with access to all the different offerings. We do break it out by modules. It works best when it's all interconnected. So the physical risk and transition risk and reporting is all tied in and it works really nicely together. But some people say, hey, I only want the physical risk assessment. I'll do the rest myself. That's fine. Good question. And that's why, just so you can see how we do this, excuse me, we're able to hide any of these sub things. So if you're like, I want to identify risks, but I don't want to do scenario analysis, we can hide that. If you say, I want everything, but I don't want reporting because we use something else, we can hide that. So we adjust the pricing and try to make that easy. Well, good question. Someone asks, with the new feature on climate policy, is there an ongoing monitoring component in the future, or just upload your 10K each time? Good question. It's not yet an ongoing monitoring thing, and it's only for climate risk. So this is like a free. I don't even want to call it a product or a feature. That's too generous. It's a free tool with a very dedicated AI prompt to solve this point in time, but you can use it unlimited times. And if people really like it and it's super valuable, we can build it out in a bigger way. We did, interestingly, this problem of how do I track global regulations has been coming up since the day we started. And so a little over a year ago, we actually started building out an AI agent that would go out and track every relevant regulation and come back and say, hey, I know everything about Apple already. I know because they are customer bars. I know the revenue. I know where the employees are. I know where the offices are. I should be able to tell you here's the global regulations that matter to you, and here's what's changed, and here's where you're compliant or not. And we spent about 6 months. We had some really wonderful customers like the Gap or Samsung piloting it. And we decided to kill it after about 6 months or so. Probably two major reasons. The first is that it was very easy to be 80% good, but very difficult to be 99% good. And that's the sort of feature where you got to be 99% good. Because if I tell you that, don't worry, there's no regulation there, and you believe me, and then you get in trouble, I'm in a lot of trouble. And that final 20% or so is just deserves a fully dedicated company, not a side project. And the second thing is we really want to lean a lot more into natural disaster planning and response. And so we killed that policy product in exchange for the risk planning product and some of the other work that we're doing around business continuity planning. But it's a problem that keeps showing up. So hopefully this tool at least solves a little bit of that in a climate risk focus. Thank you for the question. Anything else? We do while we wait. So there are a couple other resources here. Where's my homepage here? So we have a TCFD AI. Oh, okay, it's out. There you go. I didn't know it was out. So if you click that, you can now click on Policy AI and get access to all that. I guess the team just pushed it, so that's great. I need to change this on my website here, but if you click TCFD AI sneak peek, y'all can see it. There's also this TCFD AI where you're able to drag in a TCFD report or an IFRS report, your own, a competitor's, whatever, and run a whole analysis on there. We don't store these, we don't see these. So if you're to draft one, nobody ever sees it on our end. Hopefully that's a useful tool. These courses I really like and really recommend. We have two free email courses on here that send an email a week. One is about enterprise climate risk management in general. So it teaches you about how to bring climate into the ERM programs at a company. The other one is kind of more nuanced about physical climate risks. So how do you build climate models? How are these things used? How do you do natural disaster prep and response and business continuity planning? How do you quantify these risks? So hopefully that is a helpful course to you all. And then lastly, we do these webinars every single week, pretty much. Oh, sorry, there's TCFD library where you can browse. Hey, I want to see TCFD reports from Australia, or I want to see them from the UK, or I want to see them specifically in the financial industry. And you're, oh, First Advantage is someone relevant. Here's First Advantage's TCFD report. So all free and catalog and available there. And then lastly, that's what I wanted to say. We host the Beehive pretty much every single week. We have some amazing ones coming up. So I'm just going to drop that into the chat here. So we have an interview with Charles Scott from Unity on April. I am taking next week off, but on April 30th, an interview with Charles Scott from Unity. You probably don't want to come to another Beehive product training, but in case you love this so much, you're welcome to come to another one on May 14th. On May 21st, we're talking to Russell, which is RA, Russell Reynolds Associates, one of the largest like recruiting companies in the world. And you can go to if you click that button here called the Beekly, you can see all of our events. And there's many, all scheduled with some amazing interviews, some about offsets, interviewing the team at Lyft, talking about the Australia regulation, lots of great things here. So Can we see what the final TCFD report looks like? Yes, of course. This is an example of a final TCFG report. So LiveRamp is a customer of ours, publicly traded advertising technology company. This was all done inside of Beehive. So they like RAI drafted it all. Their team, of course, reviewed this and made sure they were happy with it, and their legal team made sure it's all okay. And then they exported and they put their logo and changed some colors. But this is an example that you can find live on their website. That was all done inside of Beehive. If you want another example from a private company, if you go to flowcontrolgroup.com and oh, I think they just moved it. They moved it somewhere. Um, okay, they moved it somewhere. Not sure where it went, but the LiveRamp one is right here. I wonder. There you go. So here's the flow control group one. They made theirs a little bit more like a deck. This is all also generated inside of Beehive. All the risks were identified inside of Beehive. They just put into a deck and put their logo and some of that on there. Happy to send you these. Thank you for the question. While we wait for any more questions, let's see what hurricanes we have coming up so we can all prepare together. So there's a lot that the team did here that it's brand new. So I'm exploring it myself. So we can say, where have hurricanes hit in the last 3 years? In, let's say, Eastern North America, because that's where I am. That's what I care about. Hurricane Elsa. I don't know if I remember Hurricane Elsa. That's a big one. 2021, I was still in California. Was the Beryl? I remember Beryl was crazy. That shut down multiple healthcare facilities. Beryl was a very destructive hurricane. I remember that one. And Alex didn't. Oh, Alex was more this the most lower part of Eastern North America. So, or Florida. Tough place, man. Tough place. All right. My email is audrey@bfclimate.com. So feel free to reach out with any other questions or join us for a future webinar or say hello. So, oh, there you go. Someone asked, we do not draft CSRD reports. Um, Someone asked if we draft CSRD reports. CSRD is European law. We don't draft the entire CSRD report because there's so much in there besides climate risk. We do draft the climate risk section of a CSRD report. So we don't do any social stuff or the governance stuff. We don't do your carbon emissions, for example. But we do draft, I think in CSRD it's called ESRS aligned instead of IFRS aligned. They're very similar. We do draft the IFRS aligned, or sorry, ESRS aligned portion of a CSRD report. So if you are looking at CSRD, and many American companies are reporting in 2028 on 2027 data, I believe I have that right. So if you're one of those, we do all the climate risk stuff for you very easily. Yeah, absolutely. Um, I will stay on for one more minute. We'll call it. And if there's a question, then that's awesome. If not, we'll all say goodbye and enjoy our Thursdays. Thank you, Jen. Thank you for coming. All right. We'll call it a day. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. I hope to see you in the next couple of weeks and talk soon. Bye all.